Margaret Hayes felt it the moment she stepped inside the quiet house. Something was different. The air felt heavier than usual, like a storm that had not yet started. Her daughter Emily had left that morning for a 3-day work conference in Chicago. Before leaving, Emily had hugged her mother tightly and whispered, "Just keep Daniel company, okay?" Margaret had smiled and promised. At the time, it seemed simple. Now, standing in the soft yellow light of the living room, she was not so sure. Daniel Brooks greeted her with his usual polite smile. He was tall, calm, and always respectful. He carried her suitcase upstairs and thanked her again for staying. "I didn't want the house to feel empty," he said. His voice was steady, but his eyes looked tired. Margaret noticed that small detail. She noticed everything. The house was peaceful. Family photos lined the hallway, wedding pictures, beach trips, holidays in Seattle. In every photo, Emily was glowing. Daniel looked proud beside her. Margaret studied those frames while Daniel made coffee in the kitchen. She wanted to believe nothing had changed. But lately, Emily's voice on the phone had sounded unsure. Not sad, just unsure. That evening, as gray clouds rolled over Portland and rain began tapping against the windows, Daniel mentioned casually that some friends were coming over. "Just Ryan, Cole, and Marcus," he said. "We haven't met in months." Margaret nodded. "That's nice. It won't be loud," he added quickly, almost as if he needed her approval. By 8 o'clock, the doorbell rang. The men entered with easy laughter and the smell of pizza. They greeted Margaret politely, calling her Mrs. Hayes, thanking her for the cookies she had baked earlier. They seemed like normal men in their 30s, tired from work, joking about college days, teasing Daniel about old stories. Nothing about them felt wrong. Margaret excused herself and went upstairs. She turned on the small lamp beside the guest bed and picked up her book, but the words would not stay in her mind. Every small sound from downstairs pulled her attention away. Laughter, footsteps, the scrape of chairs. At first, it sounded like any normal gathering. Then, around 10, the tone shifted. The laughter faded. The music stopped. Voices lowered. Margaret froze. She did not mean to listen. She told herself she was simply curious. Slowly, she stepped into the hallway. The stairs were just a few feet away. She moved quietly, her hand resting on the wooden railing. Daniel's voice floated upward. "I don't know how much longer I can pretend." Margaret's breath caught. Pretend what? The word echoed in her chest. She leaned slightly forward, trying to hear clearly. Ryan spoke next. "You can't keep it inside forever." A long pause followed. Margaret felt her heart beat faster. She did not want to jump to conclusions, but her thoughts rushed ahead. Of her? Was he unhappy? Had he met someone else? Was Emily's marriage not as strong as she believed? Daniel spoke again, his voice heavy. "She deserves honesty." Margaret gripped the railing. Her mind filled with images she wished away. She had seen marriages fall apart before. It always started quietly. Distance, secrets, soft conversations behind closed doors. Cole's voice. "Joined in, you're protecting her, but you're hurting yourself." Another pause. Margaret felt like she was standing at the edge of something dangerous. She wanted to walk back to her room. She wanted to forget what she was hearing. She could not move. Daniel sighed deeply. "I just don't want to break her." Those words felt sharp. Break her. Margaret stepped back slowly, as if someone had pushed her. She returned to the guest room and closed the door softly. Her hands were cold. Downstairs, the conversation continued in low tones. No one was laughing anymore. The mood had changed. Completely. It was serious. Personal. Margaret sat on the bed and stared at the wall. She remembered Emily's wedding day. The white dress, the soft smile. It's the way Daniel had looked at her like she was the only person in the room. That kind of look could not be fake, could it? She picked up her phone, but did not call her daughter. What would she say? "I overheard your husband talking." No, that would only cause fear. And she was not even sure what she had heard. Minutes passed. The rain grew heavier outside. Thunder rolled softly in the distance. Margaret stood again and paced the small room. Her thoughts felt tangled. She tried to tell herself she had misunderstood. Maybe Daniel was talking about work. Maybe he was stressed about money. Maybe it had nothing to do with Emily at all. But then she remembered Emily's voice 2 nights ago. "Mom, do you think people change after marriage?" Margaret had laughed gently at the time. Of course they grow. Love keeps people connected. Now that conversation returned to her like a warning she had missed. Downstairs, a chair moved. Footsteps crossed the living room floor. The front door opened briefly and closed again. The men were leaving. Margaret stayed still until the house grew completely quiet. After a few minutes, she heard Daniel cleaning up in the kitchen, the sink running, plates clinking softly. He was not acting like a man hiding something dark. He was calm, steady. That confused her even more. She lay down, but sleep would not come. Her mind replayed every word she had heard. Pretend, honesty, break her. The clock on the bedside table ticked loudly. Midnight passed, then 1, then 2. At some point, she must have drifted into a light sleep because she woke suddenly to silence. Morning light was beginning to push through the curtains. For a moment, everything felt normal again. Then she remembered. Margaret sat up slowly. The house was quiet. She could smell coffee downstairs. She looked at her phone. No messages from Emily yet. A soft knock came at the guest room door. "Good morning," Daniel called gently. She took a breath before answering. "Good morning." When she walked into the kitchen, Daniel was standing by the counter holding 2 mugs. He looked tired but peaceful. He handed her a cup with a small smile. "Did you sleep okay?" She studied his face carefully. There were no signs of guilt, no nervous movements. Just a man who looked thoughtful. "Yes," she replied softly, though it was not fully true. They sat across from each other at the kitchen table. The rain had stopped. The sky outside was pale and calm. Daniel stirred his coffee slowly. Margaret wanted to ask him directly. She wanted to say, "What are you pretending?" But the words felt too heavy, too dangerous. Instead, she asked, "How have you been feeling lately?" Looked up, surprised by the question. "Fine," he said at first. Then he paused, just thinking a lot about what. He hesitated. "Life," he answered with a small smile that did not fully reach his eyes. Margaret nodded, but her heart was still uneasy. The house felt peaceful again, but beneath that calm something important was waiting to be revealed. And Margaret knew one thing clearly. Whatever Daniel and his friends had planned that night, it was not simple. It was something big enough to make him afraid. And she was not sure if her daughter was ready for it. Morning light filled the kitchen, but the calm feeling did not reach Margaret's heart. She watched Daniel move around the counter, pouring coffee, washing a plate, checking his phone for a second before putting it face down. He looked normal. Too normal. That made her even more uneasy. She wanted to believe she had misunderstood the conversation from the night before, but the words were still clear in her mind. "I don't know how much longer I can pretend. She deserves honesty." Don't want to break her. Those were not small words. They were heavy. Daniel sat across from her and asked politely about her plans for the day. Margaret answered, but her mind was elsewhere. She studied him quietly. He did not avoid eye contact. He did not act nervous. Instead, he looked like a man carrying pressure inside his chest. Later that afternoon, Margaret went for a short walk around the neighborhood. The air was cool and fresh after the rain. Children rode bikes on the sidewalk. A couple walked their dog. Everything looked peaceful. But inside her, questions moved. Quickly, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Emily. "Mom, can I ask you something? Has Daniel seemed different to you?" Margaret stopped walking. Different. Her fingers hovered over the screen. She did not want to create fear. She did not want to lie either. "What do you mean?" She typed back. Emily replied quickly. It's been distant lately. Quiet. I feel like he's hiding something. I'm scared he's not happy. Chest tightened, so Emily felt it too. She stared at the message for a long moment. Then she wrote carefully. He seems thoughtful. Maybe stressed. Have you asked him directly? 3 dots appeared on the screen, then disappeared. Then appeared. Again. I tried, Emily answered. He says everything is fine. Margaret slipped her phone into her pocket and walked back home slowly. Her thoughts were racing. If Daniel was planning to leave, why act calm? Why invite friends over openly? Why talk about honesty if he planned to hide forever? When she stepped inside the house, she heard Daniel's voice in the living room. He was on the phone. I know it's risky, he said quietly, but if I don't try now, I'll regret it. Margaret froze near the hallway. Risky? Her heart beat faster. Just need a little more time, Daniel continued. I want it to be right. Silence followed. Then he said softly, she believes in me. That's what scares me the most. Margaret felt a strange mix of fear and confusion. This did not sound like a man planning to walk away. It sounded like someone afraid of failing. Daniel ended the call and noticed her standing there. For a second, surprise crossed his face. Sorry, he said. Work stuff. Margaret nodded slowly. Everything okay? He gave a small smile. I hope so. The answer felt honest. That evening, Ryan stopped by briefly to pick up a jacket he had left behind. Margaret opened the door for him. He greeted her warmly and stepped inside. Daniel around? Ryan asked. It's in the garage, she replied. Ryan hesitated, then said gently, he's lucky to have family like you. Margaret studied him. Is he okay? Ryan looked thoughtful. Under pressure. But it's a good kind of pressure. Before she could ask more, Daniel came inside. The 2 men exchanged a quick look. Not guilty, not secret, just understanding. After Ryan left, the house grew quiet again. The sun began to set, casting orange light through the windows. Margaret decided she could not carry her questions any longer. She walked into the living room where Daniel sat staring at a notebook filled with sketches and numbers. Daniel, she said softly, may we talk? He closed the notebook immediately. Not in fear, but in respect, of course. Oh. They sat at the dining table, the same place where fear had grown inside her the night before. Margaret took a deep breath. Heard part of your conversation yesterday. Daniel's eyes widened slightly, but he did not look angry. I wasn't trying to listen, she added quickly. But I heard enough to worry. He stayed quiet, waiting. You said you were pretending, she continued. You said Emily deserves honesty. You said you didn't want to break her. The words felt heavy in the air between them. For a moment, he looked young, almost vulnerable. I figured you might have heard, he said gently. Margaret's heart pounded. No, are you planning to leave her? The question came out more direct than she expected. Daniel's expression changed immediately. Shock, then hurt. Leave her, he repeated. Margaret searched his face carefully. She needed to see the truth. Daniel folded his hands on the table. I've been distant because I'm scared, he said. Not because I don't love her. Toward her. Inside were detailed plans, logos, business names, budget numbers, timelines. I want to start my own design firm, he explained. I've been working on it for months, meeting investors, saving money, talking to Ryan and the others for advice. Is official yet? He continued. If it fails, I don't want her to feel the stress. She already works so hard. I thought I could carry this alone. Margaret felt her earlier fears begin to loosen. The pretending, he added, is pretending I'm not terrified. This is a huge risk. We have a mortgage. We have responsibilities. If I fail her. His voice was steady, but emotion sat just under the surface and breaking her. Margaret asked softly. He looked down at his hands. If I tell her and it doesn't work out, she'll see disappointment in me. I don't want to be the reason she loses faith. Silence filled the room. Margaret felt both relief and guilt. She had imagined betrayal. She had imagined secrets of the heart. Instead, she saw a man afraid of not being enough. She doesn't need you to be perfect, Margaret said gently. She needs you to be honest. Daniel's eyes lifted. You think she'll understand? He asked quietly. I know she will, Margaret replied. Emily loves you, not your success, not your title, you. Daniel leaned back and closed his eyes for a second. It looked like a weight had shifted inside him. I didn't realize I was pushing her away, he admitted. Thought I was. Protecting her. Margaret smiled softly. Marriage isn't about protection from fear. It's about facing fear together. But she could hear parts of the conversation from the kitchen. At first, I was scared to tell you, Daniel said. I didn't want to disappoint you. A pause. Then his voice softened. No, I'm not unhappy. I'm scared. There's a difference. Margaret heard Emily's voice through the speaker, emotional but steady. You don't have to hide things from me, Emily said. We're a team. Daniel laughed, softly, and the sound carried relief. They talked for nearly an hour. When he ended the call, his shoulders looked lighter. The next day, Emily returned home earlier than planned. Daniel picked her up from the airport. Margaret stayed back, giving them space. When the front door opened, Emily stepped inside and she held him just as close. Margaret watched from the hallway, her heart finally calm. Later that evening, the three of them sat together for dinner. The mood felt open, warm, honest. Emily reached across the table and squeezed Daniel's hand. I'm proud of you, she said, no matter what happens. Daniel smiled in a way Margaret had not seen in days. Thank you for believing in me. Margaret realized something important then. Fear can look like distance. Silence can look like doubt. But sometimes it is just love trying too hard to protect itself. As the night settled quietly around the house, Margaret felt grateful she had not acted too quickly. Grateful she had waited for truth. Daniel and his friends had made plans that night. Not plans to walk away, but plans to build something brave. And now, no one was pretending anymore.